We love talking to fascinating women. Today we have one such woman, Traci Hunter Abramson.
One of the thriller authors here at Seagull Book. She has written over 30 books, but that's not the most exciting part about who she is and how she shows up, because she has some unique connections to the youth, to the CIA, and also to how we can connect with our Heavenly Father. Stay tuned for today's Go and Be. Hello and welcome to Go and Be. I'm Michelle McCullough, also joined by Christy Gardner, and we have with us our guest today, who is Traci Hunter Abramson. She is an author of 30 books and former CIA, which she kind of sometimes weaves into those stories, which is exciting. Traci, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are really, really excited to get into who you are as a person. You are an author, you're a swim coach, you were in the CIA. So what makes you you? How did all of this come together?
You know, I think a lot of it comes down to just dreaming. You know, it's like when you're a kid, you think, what can I be when I grow up? And I was going to be an author. I was going to be a spy. I was going to be a horse jockey. You know, I was just like, I was going to be all these different things. And being an author lets me do anything I want to be. So I think that's really kind of where I started, was just the imagination. I mean, my dad used to make me go to bed at like 8 o'clock at night. And in Arizona, it gets dark really late. So I had to do something to amuse myself. So that's kind of how I became me.
You made up stories in your head?
Oh yeah, something, I mean, I had hours to kill.
Wow, that's interesting.
So you've written 30 books, but this isn't the 31st book you wrote. This is actually the first book you wrote.
Yes.
Tell us that story.
So basically what happened was, right as I was leaving the CIA, I started writing. I, kind of played with writing in college, but never really did anything with it. And then as I was going through, I was like, okay, I'm going to learn how to be an author. And this was the first book I actually wrote, start to finish, that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And let me tell you, I wrote very badly. So I was a storyteller.
Don't we all?
I was a storyteller who hadn't learned how to write yet. So my sister-in-law, Rebecca, she would read my things, and I was a closet writer. Nobody knew I wrote except for my sister-in-law. My husband had no clue. And so
Really?
He had no clue, none. I mean, I'm former CIA. I can keep a secret. So we had a great time with it, and she just kept teaching me like little things and how to, like she would pick one big problem and I would learn how to fix it, and then I would learn something else, and we just progressed. And ultimately I submitted that one with around the same time as I submitted Undercurrents to Covenant. And after going through and looking at Undercurrents, got submitted first and was accepted, and I looked back and I said, this one isn't good enough, send it back. And it took me all these years.
Really?
So literally this was like 25 years since I wrote it, is how long it took to come out. And when I say I was a storyteller, this book has already turned into, it's going to be a trilogy, because I told the story very well. I didn't show it very well. So this is the upgraded version.
I love that.
I like that.
So.
Okay, but I'm still trying to do math in my head, and you said you wrote the book 25 years ago and you published 30 books, and you're a swim coach, and all the other things that you do. So how do you do it? How do you write? How does that come into play? Is it something that you're doing all the time? Do you go away to write? How does that, the math doesn't add up.
Okay, so you know how a lot of people they put in their daily routine to you have to exercise, you have to do this and that or whatever. Well, my exercise is also my writing time. I write while I'm on the treadmill, and I write while I'm on my exercise bike. So about 50% of my writing.
Like a computer? Like
So
a laptop? I'm thinking about this
so
as a writer.
I have it's called an Alpha Smart Neo. It's like this old-fashioned keyboard. All it is a word processor. There's no email on it. There's no games. There's nothing to distract me. And so I'm sitting think about it. You're walking for an hour on the treadmill, and I'm not walking that fast. Don't do this at home if you're, don't go fast. But, so for some reason, my mind just seems to get really creative while I'm moving. And so that's what I do.
Well, where does the keyboard go?
Oh, it just goes right here where you'd put a book. And so I just am typing while I'm going.
Fascinating.
And what really happened was I started out when I was editing and I was just proofreading something. It's like, oh man, it was so much easier to work out when I was proofreading. And so when I changed that dynamic of, wait, I could write at the same time, it totally opened the door. So literally my days just expanded because, and then before COVID, when I would want to listen to my scriptures and things like that, I would do it on the way. I would do the audio on my way to and from the gym. So I was getting my spiritual side fed on my way to the gym. I was physically taking care of myself, and then I was being able to mentally enjoy myself. And it was just like, it just balanced.
Accomplish your whole life in 1 hour with Tracy.
It was two hours at the gym.
2 hours.
But that's because in my mind, I'm thinking you just went into your home and you did it, but you're taking your word processor to the gym.
It fit in
Oh my gosh,
purse.
I love this so much. This is why I've never written a book, okay? So now it will change. I will get on the treadmill.
So you and I have talked about your career in the CIA. Mm-hmm. How do they feel about you writing? And because you're writing things that are mysterious, and what do you consider your genre?
Probably like a government intrigue. I mean, it's really suspense thriller.
Yeah.
But it's,
So you're writing this suspense thriller.
Right.
How does the CIA feel about it? Do they care?
So I have a secrecy agreement with them, and I have to submit anything with intelligence to them. So, and one of the things that's kind of cool is that we actually had, for Heirs of Falcon Point, which will come out in October, I have 3 co-authors. So they have now had to be cleared by the CIA. So anything I write that has to do with intelligence, military action, anything like, government intel has to go through them. So, and honestly, I've been really lucky that they're very supportive. If they find something that they have a problem with, they'll go ahead and just say, change this, and here's how we recommend you change it, and it shouldn't change your story too much. So that's basically what we've done.
I kind of love the idea that somewhere there are CIA agents reading Tracy's novels. That's so funny to me.
I love it. Okay, so as we talk about the different facets and the different parts of you, one of the other things that we think is fascinating is how you also are a swim coach. And you have these amazing experiences leading youth. Yeah. And so I would love for you to share, what are some things that you've learned through that process? And do you have any advice for others who are leading youth and how they can really help them get to their core, see their worth, and help them become who they need to be?
I mean, I think it's a hard question because the youth have a lot of challenges right now. I mean, they feel stressed. They feel like they have to be perfect. And I think a lot of the things that I've really enjoyed with working with the youth is that, I mean, these teenagers, they come from a lot of different places. I live in a heavy military area. So some of these kids have lived, they've been living overseas. I mean, we have to really protect our practices and be very flexible of, we'll understand we're not going to penalize you because you wanted to go see dad who's deployed in someplace right now, and the only time you can see them is meeting them in Germany or something like that. So it's taught me a lot of flexibility, but it's also given me just an understanding of like, a lot of the kids that look like they have it all together are the ones that are needing therapy later because they were trying so hard to be perfect. And so I think a lot of times we want to have expectations for our kids. We want them to know that they can achieve anything, but we also have to make sure that they know that it's okay to fail and it's okay to be like, talk to us. We want to be there for all of the journey, not just when you're shining and we can brag about you, but we want to be there when there's tears. And so I think that's been one of the great things. I mean, one of my, some of my swimmers, we had gone out, and it was actually right after my sister-in-law's, or right before her funeral. So she just passed away, and we had a state meet right in the middle of the weekend between her passing away and the funeral. And we went in, and it ended up being, these kids were magic. They won the state relay that year. And it was just an amazing experience. But the next year, they come in and they didn't quite make it. The same team that they just barely beat them. But the cool story behind it was one of the kids wasn't academically eligible at the beginning of the season. And we sat down and said, look, he's not gonna be eligible until until regionals. So that means if he were to come in, he's gonna take somebody's spot. And these boys were because I'd always involved them in decisions, like, hey, when I make the decision, it's final, but I will let you tell me what you think about it. And so because we'd always had that kind of mentality on our team, they came in and I had several kids say, I'll give up my spot for him because this is gonna matter. This is gonna help him graduate and care enough about his academics to get there. And the kid that said that was the one who did.
Ended up giving it up.
And it was great because we still ended up he got one relay instead of 2. We made sure everyone still got a spot. But it was just that unity was so amazing. They got second in the state for that one, and they were hoping to get first. The next relay, they also got second, but they were cheering like crazy because they thought they were going to get third. So it all came down to the expectation. It's like they want to be at a certain level, but it's okay to not quite make it. And it's fantastic. We can cheer when they do. So
yeah. I love the idea that we can teach our youth that it's okay when you don't quite make it.
Yeah.
And that there's still learning and still growth and still advancement in that.
And get back in the pool, right?
Yeah,
You keep trying.
get right back in.
Absolutely.
And I'm betting that the kid who gave up his spot will remember that
Oh, yeah.
much more than he would if he had won the relay.
Absolutely. And it was really amazing because one of those kids was just featured in an article in Indiana. He's one of the top sprinters in the country right now. And it was just seeing the magic of how they all tried to integrate him. And he's one of the few kids I had that was an African American. And I never even thought about it. And to him, it made a huge difference that as a freshman, he came in feeling sometimes like he was a minority. And he didn't feel like a minority because these other kids had also been maybe the fastest as a freshman or a sophomore. It's like, hey, you guys, make sure you include him as a team. And they became such a tight-knit team. So they did call him names. As soon as every time he would win his race, be like, he's a freshman, and they would chant it. But it was a wonderful experience just because they became unified. And sometimes kids, that's what they really need. They need to know that somebody else, that they matter to somebody else, and that they matter. They just matter.
I
That's
think
what we all need.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I think we all want to feel that sense of belonging
Yes.
and that connection to others and that ability to be able to come together. And so I love that story because it's the ways that we see each other and the
Right.
ways that we help each other and put our arms around each other that make a big difference, and then they can go and become what they're supposed to do next.
And the great thing was, until I read this article, I had no idea that high school made such a difference to him. Like, he was like, I just loved coming in. There was so much diversity. Everyone was so we were all excited to have him. And being in an environment where somebody's excited that you're there, what a gift to anybody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you seen connections to the way that you work with swimmers, to the ways that you worked on a team in the CIA? And do you have any thoughts or insights about what makes a really cohesive or unified group?
I think a lot of it is we all want to feel like we matter in what we're doing. Like, what are we contributing? And I think that anytime we are making sure that everyone has something to contribute and they understand their value, it's going to cross over, whether it's as a swimmer or whether it's in the CIA or any place else. But like, we had one of my girls that was a senior this year. She was never going to be one of the fastest kids, but we are going to miss her dearly because she was always so positive. She was just such a positive influence and quietly done. But when you have kids like that, they know that, when we're going up and saying how much we're going to miss her, and even when she was still there, thank you so much for all you do. Thank you for being a leader on the team. Thank you for always doing everything we ask of you. And so when you're complimenting people for that, everyone else starts wanting to be that person too. Not that they need to change who they are, but they want to conform to, I am going to be contributing as well.
So I have a question for you.
Okay.
You left the CIA at what age?
I was 28, I believe.
Okay, and then you became a writer at what age?
It was probably about 7 years later. Oh no, I take it back. Well, it was 2003 and I left in 95, so 35-ish.
35. And then you started coaching swim at what age?
28.
Okay, so my point with all of this is sometimes we think that we're expired or that we've reached an expiration date. Maybe it's just me. But I love about you that you decide what you want to be and then you go and you be that. It doesn't matter what your age is. It doesn't matter your background. You just decide something. So what would you say to women who are listening or watching that want to do something? They have something inside of them, but they think it's too late, I'm too old, or I'm not good enough, or I don't have the background to be able to go do it.
I mean, I think really I would say you're never too old for anything. If you have something you want to learn, if there's some skill or talent that you want to explore, even if there's a new friendship you want to make, it's worth your time. If you think if it matters to you, it matters. So you just go for it.
And how do you get the gumption to go out and do it?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I don't know. I just don't ever think about it.
What a gift.
Yeah, I've been very blessed with having a lot of friends that, you you just pretty much know that they're going to trust you or not trust you, because I'm former CIA, so they're just like, well, we trust you as far as we can throw you, which isn't very far. But I think a lot of it is sometimes it's a prayer issue too. You just kind of have to say, like, all right, what do I need to do to make this happen? But sometimes it's also visualizing where you want to be and just finding that path and trusting those people that maybe have encouraged you in the past, or that have always had your best interest at heart.
Well, on that note, how do you stay connected to God in all of this? Like, what does that look like? How do you keep that connection as you're doing all these other things?
And I think for me, it's always in the back of my head anyway. Like, I know my swimmers used to laugh at me. I'm like, okay, guys, I'm going to pray really hard about this meet, And I'll pray about everything. I pray about whether or not what kids should go on which events in swimming. I pray about even about what plot I'm doing. Everything, I want everything I'm doing to be as good as what I did in the past. And so it's always just trying to strive to be better. And you can't do that without the Lord being involved. And so the other thing too is I think giving credit where it's due. Everything I've done wasn't me. This is something that has been because the Lord has given me this gift and given me the ability to share it in the way I have. So I think that's really keeps you grounded to what really matters.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Okay, well, we ask all of our guests the same question, and so we would love for you to tell our audience, if you could give them one piece of advice about how to go and be, what would that be?
I think probably it would be just to be happy with who you are. We all have our own gifts and challenges, but accept who you are and just be happy with that person. So
I like it.
That's a wonderful piece of advice. I think it's hard for people to accept themselves. I think it's hard to recognize that we are a certain way and that we do have gifts and abilities and challenges. I love that advice. Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks.
So we encourage you to go into the world and be whoever you are. Go into the world and discover the parts of yourself that you wish could come alive. Go into the world and be.
Sweet salt. Sweet Salt Modest Clothing at Seagull Book.